I'm excited for this one. I've seen the Clark sisters like one at a time on this channel, not all of them. But you know, I've been told again and again and again that together it's like, so let's get into it. I'm excited.
Twinkie Clark and the fabulous Clark sisters.
We're so happy to be in your city. We want to let you know that we didn't come all the way from Detroit to look at y'all. We didn't come here to let you know that we could sing. But we come here to let you know that Jesus is the baddest man in town. All you got to do is give your life to him. I wonder if I got a witness out there. How many of y'all come to have church?
Oh boy. Sliding in between notes in unison, that's really tough. This is super, super smart. So they're building a chord, do, 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 do. I think it's a 7th chord, and then they're moving around. I was actually teaching a student about most of us, we view harmony in a very vertical way, right? Like the notes stack up top of one another, and then we call that like a 7th chord, and that's how we think about it, and then we move to the next chord. And guitar players and pianists can get pretty far by doing just that, by being like, here's some chords, and we're just going to kind of riff on that. But singers can't do that. Unless you're Layla Hathaway, you can't sing more than one note at a time. I don't know how Layla does it, but so we have to think of harmony in a melodic way. And the best way to think about that is counterpoint. So to move between chords in a melodic way takes a lot more of an understanding of music, because you have to view harmony in a horizontal plane and how it moves. Because you can't just go chord, chord. You have to move to change the harmony as an individual. And this is something where that church upbringing, regardless of whether you're religious or not, it's almost always the case that the church upbringing will yield the best singers, because then they just start singing, right? And that's some of the best singers I've ever met in my life started singing in the church, so. That's so good. Another thing that's really awesome is that when singers do this, it's way more satisfying than another thing. If I do, that all sounds good, but when you do it with people who can micro-tune their pitches, it's more sonorous, right? Like it's just tuning versus whatever. It just sounds better because you can tune those thirds, right? Oh, it's just lovely. I live by an airport, and it's the worst.
It's yours. It's yours.
So this is cool. These are actually, they're not the belts that we're kind of used to hearing, right? But this is actually a really great way to train belting. The belting comes at a risk of. Okay, so the way belting works is that the folds are shortened and fattened. There's a danger to that because so much pressure can build up underneath those folds because they're thick, and then whoop, bam, and you can get a vocal hemorrhage that way. None of these women struggle with belting at all. But this is a great exercise if you're trying to learn. that sort of calling as you slide up will help you, as opposed to trying to sustain a really, really big note. That's difficult for you. If you slide up, you can kind of touch the range, you can kind of feel it out. You're like, okay, this could be better. I could use less air, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is really cool stuff. And I love, again, this sliding in the harmony, the locking in. You can't do this with people you've never worked before or with. You can't do this if you've never worked with people. This is only from people that work together a lot. Oh, beautiful. On one hand, every single one of their voices is gorgeous, and they're not compromising vocal quality to blend with one another. Right? Everyone's got their own part in the harmony there, and it sounds amazing. It's gorgeous. All too often, I think when we listen to choirs, there's oftentimes a lack of responsibility on the individual singers to work on technique. They hide in the numbers. Absolutely not the case here, and it's marvelous. It's a gift to hear an ensemble this good working together so well. The composition and arrangement of this is stunning and excellent. This is musically so sophisticated. I have chills. Like, the way that they're moving in between harmonies, the way that they're going through non-chord tones, which is just to say, like, how they move from one chord to another, not exactly being on the chord, they just kind of move around it. Come on! That's so good! I don't know what chord it is. I could sit here for a minute trying to figure it out. But this is another thing where technically, they're no longer belting. They're using the thyroid tilt, which is how you hear that vibrato. You hear the warming of the tone. The thyroid cartilage in the larynx is this basically the Adam's apple. It's a very large piece of cartilage. And when you tilt it, trying to make an unannounced present, trying to be subtle, dog. When you tilt the thyroid cartilage, the larynx lowers a little bit by virtue of this happening, right? So the thyroid cartilage tilts, and then the folds stretch as a result of that, right? Because you're going from vertical to diagonal. So these folds stretch out a little bit like a rubber band. So you end up getting louder, not as loud as belt, but you can get quite loud. But it also warms up the tone. And then it also results in vibrato because this tilt is not stable. So it moves around like that. And that's how you get vibrato. And so what's always a pleasure is when singers can do both belt and this more like classical thyroid thing. That's strikingly different from how they started. Harmonically still brilliant. The arrangement is great. But like the way that they're executing it is awesome. Nice.
How many of y'all know about a blessing out there? I'm gonna tell you how to get it. If you can just meditate on it, come on, no matter. And then you got to just focus and concentrate on it, hey, girl. Listen, and then you gotta wait on it. You gotta wait on it.
Oh boy, yes. So squalling and growling, which a concept that I'm really thankful for whoever messaged me on Instagram and like was like, here, watch this video on squalling and growling, and you'll have a better appreciation and understanding. The human instrument can do a lot of things, which is really cool. What is happening here physically is that there are two pieces of little tiny pieces of cartilage above the vocal folds called the false folds. And if you just hold your breath, you'll feel that kind of close. Just like hold your breath, you'll feel them close. And they can do a lot of cool things. So they can create, like throat bass. You can do metal screaming with it. But particularly in this instance, you can do this sort of squalling and growling. And it's worth, I used to be of the opinion it's not worth naming the specific technique if you name what's happening physically. But my mind has definitely changed on that because there's so many different things you can do with the false folds. And this is a very, very specific technique. I've never even, whenever I listen to gospel, I've never heard someone even remotely close to phoning it in. It's always 120%. Lovely. You know when my head starts bumping up and down that this is great. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, I'm very white. Some of you might be surprised by that statement. But shaking my groove thing is not something that happens often for me. So
if you can just hold on to it.
there's a lot that happened there. But hold on. The level of precision, they're so good. I want to give some attention to this particular performance right here, which is stunning. To those who don't know, this might sound like shouting to you, but it's actually extremely precise. To be able to get this sound, to be able to do it on a pitch without it going flat, the amount of breath control you need is ridiculous.
If you can just hold on.
That growl or squall, and I apologize, I need to really cement the difference between the two, but that is the false folds coming together, and that makes singing exponentially more difficult. It is way easier when the false folds are retracted to sing. This is extremely precise.
Truly.
Oh my god. Again, it sounds gritty, it sounds real, and I'm sure that's where emotionally she is, but it's incredibly technical. And of course she's at a point where she's not thinking about it, right? Like, that's how great she is. But for the rest of us who are trying to learn this thing that she's doing, it's so precise. And then also to not have like optimal posture while doing it makes it even more difficult because the torso is contracting, so you're having a harder time with the controlling of the exhale. This is really pretty darn good. Like, really? It's just, like, whoo! That's the technical term for it, is I got nothing. I mean, that's a super high note, right? And it's clean, and none of it is superficial. None of it. Gorgeous. Oh boy. I don't know if I passed over that run before, but that's a killer. The reason why I love this run so much and why I think it stands out is that it's in contrast to a lot of the growling, a lot of the belting, a lot of the epic big stuff. She makes a really, really intelligent choice to contrast all that with this very gentle run. I love it. So yeah, the run's really good, and the meter is respected where like she's giving emphasis where it needs to be. But the fact that they keep the arrangement so interesting. She's not on the downbeat. The rest of the Clark sisters, while she's singing, are kind of really giving the harmony context by doing the harmony, and they're on the downbeat. And then she's like not on the downbeat. She's like on the offbeat, and she's doing all of this stuff that allows for these really, really awesome expressive phrasings to be standing out because it's not on the downbeat. See that? Like, that's really awesome when she sings Lord. You know, when I was in college studying music, everyone would always bring up the King Singers, which are like this UK group made of very, very high caliber musicians. But I never found them to be that interesting. And that's a subjective thing, right? Like, you know, people can like what they like and dislike what they don't. But the reason why everyone would always flip with the King Singers is because they were doing incredibly sophisticated things harmonically. But I never really liked, I felt like they were sacrificing too much vocally to pull those things off. This is just as musically involved as anything that the King Singers would do, but I think it's done with a marvelous sound. And I've been trying to wrap my head around why it is in gospel that I've never heard anything remotely close to 90% commitment. It's always been over the edge. And the thought that I think I've come to, and I know that people are going to respond in the comments that I'm making it too complicated, and it's about, you know, Jesus, it's about God. But I think it's more than that. If I tried to do this, even if I didn't try to do gospel and I tried to do it my own way, I don't have the relationship with spirituality, with God as these women do. Decades of building a relationship with your spirituality, and then basically doing a love song, and then sharing that moment with everybody in the room. Of course, you're going to have performances that are hard to follow up in terms of just pure conviction, let alone technique, let alone gorgeous sound, let alone the musicianship. And, you know, in the Tamala video, and I'm so sorry, all I ever get to hear usually, like, I read a lot of the comments, and so, like, but I only, you know, like, no one ever can leave on YouTube like a voice comment, so I don't always understand how to pronounce different names. And this is not, trust me, it's not exclusive to black singers. Like, I think I mispronounced someone else's name I was doing a critique of. But yeah, the maturity and the depth to get to a level of this performance is just decades of emotional connecting, of you know, being that connected when you're in your dark times, in your good times. And when you see it that way, I think it's really easy to understand why gospel performances are, at least as far as I've seen, always more expressive and emotional than other genres. And it's something that, like, a lot of people have said they grew up with this and they love it. And I wish I wish I grew up with this. But I'm glad I have it now. So thank you everyone for sharing these artists. I'm happy to be doing a lot more of this stuff.